data to the user. So as part of your save method, you are using merge, right? Merge will return the saved data from the database. So store it into one reference variable. I cannot add a return statement over here itself because the reason is I have one more statement to be added, that is transaction.commit. There is no other option. We have to store it in a local variable. Then we have to return that. Done. Now inside your what is that one? Service IMPL class. Now come back over here. Now what we'll do is we'll add your try catch here. We'll add the try catch here. We'll move this. Hey, everyone has completed with your repository, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Inside your service IMPL, now you have to decide whether the operation is success or a failure. So what you will do is the first condition comes is if the saved object, if it is equal to null, what will happen is it's a failure case, right? It's a failure case. So what I'll do is I'll create a new app response DTO. Generate parameterized constructor over there. So what is the first? If it is equal to null, that means failure, right? So you set a status as failure. Next, I'll set the status code as 500. The response data is we keep it as null only. Exception, that also I'll set it as null. Now, if it is not equal to null, what we are going to do is it's a success message. So I'll keep it as success 200. Now what I do is I take this object and
Awesome.
because the third parameter we have an object. Now if any exception comes, again it will be a failure case only. So again I'll add it over here.
इसका मतलब तो समझ नहीं पाया 200 मतलब
200 मतलब ऑब्जेक्ट्स से हुए 500 नहीं साइन
Understood or not? Everyone is able to understand, right?
yes sir, yes sir.
The only thing is that we are having a generic response over here. We want to return a valid information to the user telling like whether the request has been processed successfully or it has failed. That is what we are going to identify over here. If any exception comes, that is the request has failed. So I am setting the we have a app response DTO where we have some parameters over here, that is a status which through which we are going to set whether it is a success or a failure. Status codes we are going to set that respective status code. We have a data this represents. In case of your read operation, you need to send the data back to your the requested data. So we are having a data. The string is for error. Now based on whether the request is a success or a failure, you have to decide what data you are going to set it over here. This will be the common response structure which will be going out of your application. For all the requests, this is a common response which we are keeping it. So we'll be setting the flags and data based on the whether the request has been successful or a failure. That is what we are doing it over here. Inside this, if the request, like if we after calling this save method, if it is returning a null, that means the object has not saved. It has been failure. So what I have set it as failure case. Then the status code is 500. Now there is no data which we are sending it as part of that one. Exception occurred is no exception has occurred. I am keeping it as null. Now, if it is coming as an object, it is a success message. So it is 200 and I am returning the whatever the object which has been saved into the database. Again, if any exception comes, it's a failure case. So null, there is no data to be sent, but there is a stack trace which you can send. That is exception dot e localized message. Got it?
अरे मतलब ये क्लास का एंटिटी है ना पासवर्ड
App response DBO. Make the return type as an app response DBO. Yeah, are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Everyone is able to understand, right?
Yes, sir.
Completed.
एरर क्या होता है इसको डिक्लेयर किया और यहाँ ऊपर में क्या हो
Controller call this method.
क्या हो गया?
Completed till this. Yes, sir. Okay. Now come back to the controller. Now inside the controller you have an add a return statement. Add a return statement. See, till now we used to return model and view. Now we are not going to return any model and view. We are just returning the raw data. It's nothing but a Java object which has some set of information in it. It's not like every time. It's like in your company, it might be a list of objects, something. It's what we are doing is we are keeping it as a generic response object. That object has one of the property called as data. That data will be holding the required information for the person who is calling. Everyone has completed till this. Okay, look here. Leave all those things. Leave everything and look here. Look, leave everything. So we have a controller class. This controller class is the one which will be receiving the request and processing the request. Now, as part of this, we have a method called a create method, so create app method, which will take application DDO as an input parameter. Now, the data which will be coming for this application will be a JSON data. Now that JSON data we need to convert it into a Java objects. Now for the conversion of JSON data to the Java objects, we have an annotation called as @request body. There is an annotation called as @request body. Now after this, what happens is the JSON data gets converted to your Java object, which is nothing but your application DDO. Thus, that object we are passing it to one of the method called as process create app. Process create app of your service layer. Inside your service layer itself, you will start processing the request. Now, our requirement is I need to save this data into the database. Now, to save the data into the database, if I want to use the ORM concept, we need an entity class. So, what we are doing is whatever the data we have it, right, that we are setting it to our entity class. Now once that is done, what we are calling is, we are calling one of the method of your repository layer, which is nothing but a save method. Now what happens inside this method, we have written a logic which will save the data into the database, Now after saving the data, what we are trying to do is we are returning back the same data. Whatever the data which has been saved into the database, we are returning it from this particular method. Clear with this?
Yes.
Any doubts? Everyone is clear, right?
Yes.
Now, after that, what we are trying to do is inside this application service class, inside your what is that one? Process create app, what we are trying to do is we want to return the response part to this. Now, we need to tell the person who has got whether the request is success or a failure, right? Whether the request is a success or a failure. Now, what we are trying to do is instead of just sending as a success or a failure, we are giving him some set of information. Now, for that itself, we created one of the class called as app response DDO. We have created one class called DDO class called as app response DDO, which has 4 properties. One is a status code, data, and your error. Status represents whether the request is success or a failure. If it is a success, you will send a keyword called as success. If it is a failure, you will send a keyword called as failure. Status code, it's nothing but if it is a success, you will send it as 200. If it is a failure, you will send it as a 500 status code. Now the next you have is something called as data. Now this class, whatever we are keeping it, will be the generic response which will be going out of your application. Now there will be some set of requests where you need to send the data back to the user. So this property, through this property, that is data, you are going to set the data which you are going to send it to the person who has requested to you. Now while processing that request, you might occur an exception or a failure case. In that, status will become a failure, then status code will become a 500, then this data is null because there is no data, the request has not processed. Error will become the exception which has been raised. Clear? Now that is what we are doing it over here. Inside this, If you see it over here, right? If it is equal to null, I am treating it as a failure case. Now inside the failure case, what we have done, have an application DTO. Here I have a, what is that one? Parameter is constructed. The first parameter is a status, second parameter is a status code, the third parameter is an object which represents the data, the fourth parameter is an error. So the same way I am sending the data over here. Failure case 500 and then if any exception comes, then also it's a failure case. Clear?
Yes.
Understood or not? Yes. It's clear for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Now, one second. I need to change the return type inside my interface. Okay. Now what happens? Look. Still we are not done. Now, what is this return data we are sending it from here? App response DTO, right? What it is? A Java object, right? Now what has to go from our application? JSON data, right? Now to convert your JSON object to Java object, what is the annotation you use? Request body, right? Now for the conversion of Java to your JSON object, there is an annotation called as response body. So what you have to do is this data, because any data which will be coming to your application will be a JSON data. Any data which is going outside your application should be a JSON data. Now for the conversion of JSON to Java, you have an annotation called as request body. For the conversion of Java to the JSON, you have an annotation called as response body. Now you can use this annotation called as response body. So that application DTO Java objects gets converted to your JSON data.
But phone क्लास
Class is nothing but the outgoing data, right? Now, in our case, what should be the outgoing data of our application? JSON data, right? Now, to convert Java object to the JSON object, what is the annotation we have to use? At the rate response body, right? We need to use response body. Now, instead of these two annotation, one is at the rate controller is to create an object of a class. At the rate response body is to convert the Java object to the JSON object. Now, instead of using these two annotations, there is one annotation called as at the rate rest controller. There is one annotation called as at the rate rest controller, which is a combination of at the rate controller and response body. There is one annotation called as at the rate rest controller, which is a combination of at the rate controller and response body. Completed?
Yes, sir.
Now there is no user interface. Open the Postman.
अच्छा बीच है यार, इतनी तो ठंडी लग रही है। क्या हो गया?
अभी तक मैनेजमेंट है, ठंडा तो है।
बीच डिग्री करके रखा है।
Everyone has opened the Postman now.
एमपी बिहार वाले 26-27 में रहने वाले। क्या इसको आया नहीं, लोड नहीं हो रहा है क्या इसमें? क्या लोड नहीं हुआ अभी तक पोस्ट में? इसका पोस्ट में लोड नहीं हुआ अभी तक सर। हो गया तुम्हारा? कोई डिपेंडेंसी ऐड करेगा जेसन वाले, जैसे डिपेंडेंसी ऐड करेंगे निकल गई। इसके कौन नहीं हो रहा है इसको? सर कौन नहीं हो रहा वो फर्स्ट में? वो ओपन कर रहे हैं क्रोम वाला, तो क्रोम का भी है ना, ये नहीं बताया लोग को।
एप्लीकेशन इंटरफेस, इसका एप्लीकेशन इंटरफेस है, एप्लीकेशन सर्विस का इंटरफेस।
ये चेक करने के लिए रहता है ना, जो कि वो जरूर नहीं पड़ते हैं लोग को यूजर इंटरफेस की।
उसमें देखो ना, उसका एप्लीकेशन इंटरफेस का इंटरफेस में क्या नहीं, सर्विस एक इंटरफेस होगा ना, इंटरफेस
मेथड लिखा होगा ना वो तो,
एक ही है,
वो तो मेथड लिखा होगा, मेथड लिखा होगा, इम्प्लीमेंट करो।
और कुछ नहीं है चेंजेस।
वो तो इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं ना उसमें, इम्प्लीमेंट में
कर ही दिया, इसका ये सब कर ही दिया है। उसके बाद कंट्रोलर में तो यही था ना बस।
रंग अगर देखने मालूम पड़ जाएगा,
याद नहीं करना।
डाउनलोड कर रहे क्रोम एक्सटेंशन ही है। अब बताया जाएगा कल छुट्टी है कि नहीं है। कल बताएगा, अभी कल क्लास देगा, जा रहा है, चाहे घर जाने का मन होगा उसका कल भाग जाएगा वो, और ऑफिस कर गया
ये तो है,
नहीं है उसके घर जाने का मन होगा तो
आ जाएगा। ठीक है,
तो घर जाओ तो 3-4 दिन आओ तो बेकार है।
क्या बोले?
घर जाओ 3-4 दिन आ रहा उनके लिए बेकार है।
हाँ, तो उसको फिर फायदा क्या? हम लोग का तो घर बगल में ही है,
आंध्रा में है, 6 घंटे का रास्ता होगा। बाइक से जाएगा तो और आराम है, जल्दी पहुँचेगा। ओपन
then from the URL
क्रोम में एक्सटेंशन यूज़ करना भी है।
मतलब वो लोडिंग में अटक गया ना।
वो मेरा अटक गया
किसका?
प्रोसेस क्रिएट
लास्ट में रिक्वेस्ट सेंड कर रहा था स्टेटस कोड उसका
ये चार्जर
स्टेटस कोड को बोल रहा है।
चार्जर चार्जर
उसका क्लास कब
हाँ कहाँ चल जाए
बस मेरे को उस मेथड का वो क्रिएट और मेरे को ना प्रोसेस
open the postman
वहाँ चार्जर कहाँ है?
है बैग
लग नहीं है। एक्सटेंशन बोर्ड लेके आया करो।
खरीदा है।
एक्सटेंशन बोर्ड लेके आया करो।
अरे यार एरर मार रहा है।
लो अरे
अब एक्सटेंशन बोर्ड जरूरत पड़ेगी लोगों को।